Hey, welcome to Northumberland Zoo on YouTube. My name is Maxine and I work here. And on today's episode, we're going to be looking at how to do mock rock. We did post a video about mock rock a few months ago and it was really popular. Obviously, a lot of people wanting to really understand the technique and what's involved in the process of creating artificial rock out of concrete. So I'm down here at our new serval house. It's one of our small cats that we've got on site. We've got obviously our off-show dens, and then we've got this lovely big on-show den which is open, which will be on view to the public. So what we want to do is we want to create some mock rock in here just to try and break up the shape a little bit, just to try and make it look a little bit more natural when people are looking through the window. So the plan is that we want to put like a big rock along here with a bit of a flat bit on it, putting another rock along here so that if she wanted to, she could actually lay down right in front of the window. It'd be nice and toasty for her. We've got one in our snow leopard house already and the snow leopards love sleeping on it. So we want to recreate that for Afia and see if she likes it. So I'm going to be going into quite an in-depth process of this and showing you all of the mixing techniques for the ratios for the concrete, how we do the framing, how we do the meshing, what tools that we use, and then the finishing touches, so that you can hopefully go away from this and have a go at doing mock rock yourself. I would just like to say though that I am not a professional mock rock person. I can do little bits and pieces, but normally if we have a big project that we need to get done here at the zoo, we get Aidan from Unreal Productions in, who does it as his full-time job. It's not worth us getting Aidan in for this little job because he's not based anywhere near us. He's about 3 hours away. So on little projects like this, we will do them ourselves. So I'm by no means a professional. I try my best, but I understand the technique and I think I can show you how to do it too. Okay, so the first stage of the mock rocking is done. We've built these wooden frames, which is where we're going to be putting the concrete onto. And I know they don't look amazing, I am not a joiner, but it doesn't really matter because you won't see any of this once you've got the mock rock on it, once you've actually got the cement on top of it. All you need to do is make sure that it's sturdy, and it's more about downward force sturdy because there's a lot of weight that's going to be sitting on top of this. So we've attached it to the wall. There's actually supporting legs in there which help keep it nice and sturdy. It's attached to the wall in several different places, and then there's legs and supports running along the back wall there. Like I said, we're not joiners, but this is how it's done, and it's hidden underneath there. And then on this one over here, this one's done slightly different just to show you a different kind of technique. If you're building in an area which is tidy and clean and say the wall's already painted, and you want to try and reduce the risk of splattering concrete everywhere, what you do is you actually run some visqueen plastic sheeting behind and around your work on the wall. And once you've finished putting mock rock on here, you cut it away. And it basically just protects all your surfaces from getting splashes on them, because it will happen. And again, this one very similar. Again, it's got nice supporting strong legs. Everything's braced to the wall. It's very strong. So I can't stress enough, although that this looks a little bit rough and a little bit like cowboyish, it doesn't matter what it looks like underneath because you will not see it. And I know it doesn't look like a rock, but once you imagine that this has got like a sheet draped over it, you can kind of finish the rock wherever you want to. So it's all about kind of the final stages of the process where you kind of tweak the design. And even though we've got these really kind of harsh long edges around here, it doesn't mean that the rock is just going to be all the way along there. That's not that. It's all about when you put the mesh on in the next stage and adding the actual layers of concrete on, because the concrete is going to be about this thick on top of here, which gives you a lot of kind of room to play with shapes. So this is very much like the base structure. So we're now ready for the meshing stage, which is where you start putting the next layer onto the framework that you've put together. And what we're using is called galvanized expanded mesh. And it is very, very naughty to work with. So you've definitely got to make sure you've got some gloves, and I'm not even joking. You just have to touch the edges because it's unfinished bits of spiky metal, and each one of them is just crying out to stab you. So definitely wear gloves for this part of the process. Now that the frames have been meshed, it's ready to start putting what's called the base layer of the concrete down, which is called the scratch coat. And the scratch coat goes onto this mesh and you kind of like squeeze it through. There's a special technique which we'll show you. You always start from the bottom and work up, but you just need to make sure that your mesh is secure and nice and quite firm, not too bouncy. So we have actually stapled it down in various different areas on the frame. So on the top it's a little bit bouncy, but once it gets a little bit of weight on it, it will firm up. So don't worry too much if you have got a little bit of flex in your mesh. So we'll show you all the mixing ratios with the mixer and what sort of things you need to add into the mixer when you make your base coat called the scratch coat. The fibres go on the base coat to help stop the cement from falling through the mesh. You don't need them for the top coat because of the coat you'll get the little hairs sticking out. So it's only on the base coat that you need the fibres. So I've got our mix here and it's quite like shapeable, I think is the best word I can come up with. We've put those fibres in and the fibres actually help kind of hold it together. They're a polyurethane fibre, and that means that when you're pushing it onto the mesh that it doesn't fall through as easily. It actually kind of sticks out on the surface. So the whole point of the scratch coat is to basically cover your mesh over, put a base coat on. It doesn't look pretty, but that's not the point. You just basically want to cover as much of the mesh as you can, ready for the top coat, which is your carving coat. So the best way to do it is to get a nice little handful, wear rubber gloves obviously because your hands will dry out massively, and start at the bottom of the structure and work up, and then you can build up the layers of the concrete as you go up. So in areas where the mesh hasn't quite met the bottom of the frame, you can just fill that gap, but I'm just ever so gently pushing that against the mesh. I don't want to push it all the way through because obviously then that's wasted cement. But you just start building it up like that. And it doesn't matter if you've got a few gaps, because once you put the top coat on, that'll be more than enough for the top coat to attach to. a couple of days since we did the scratch coat on the base of the frames for the mock rock, and you can see it's gone off, so it's hard and it's good enough to put the top coat on now, which is the coat that we start carving. So as you can see, it's very, very rough. We've obviously put these scratches on it as well, which is why it's called the scratch coat, and that makes the next layer a lot better to stick to it. So yeah, they don't look too pretty at the minute, but this is what you're kind of expecting from a scratch coat. And then we've got this one over here, which is in the sun, very similar, all ready to go and ready to get its top coat on. So before we start putting the second layer of the carving mix on, you want to spray the actual surface of your scratch coat first, and that dampens that down, because what will happen is if you put your top coat on, it'll suck all the moisture out of that, and this also helps it adhere to the scratch coat better as well. And obviously we've taken the fibres out of the mix on this final carving bit, but we're going to add something into it, which is Plasticiser. This helps make this top coat a lot more kind of malleable and workable, so that means it stays in a better state, ready for carving, and it doesn't go like all funny. It only takes about 15 mil per like cement mix load, so it doesn't take a lot, but it makes a big difference. So this is the first kind of part of the top coat of the cement, and basically we've thrown it on and smoothed it out, and added a few little details, and obviously used the stippling technique of the little hand brushes there, which gives it a really nice rough texture. Not gone overboard with it, because obviously rocks don't look like that. Highly recommend that you have a look on the internet at different pictures of different types of rocks, and depending on what your project is based on, is try and match the rock to the place of where you want your rock to come from. When I say that, I mean, like, you know, African rocks in different savanna areas look very different to rocks from the Canadian mountain Rockies or the Himalayas. So have a little look at different types of rock textures and different types of like cracks and, you know, the striations that run through the rocks, and try and replicate that, or kind of aim for that when you're carving. So on this base layer, we have to wait until it hardens a little bit. So it's actually gone quite hard. It's been about an hour and a half since we put the base layer on, and it's ready to actually start adding a little bit of detail. And we basically do that with a couple of tools. So we've got one of these, and it's basically like going along and kind of adding features that you would normally find on a rock or a boulder. We've just gone for generic boulders in here just because I wanted to just do something to break up the room. I don't really want to go overboard on these rocks, simply because the focus of this exhibit is not the rocks, it's actually the animal that lives in here. So I don't want to make these rocks look amazing, and also I don't have time to make them look amazing, and also I'm not a mock rock professional. So we just want them to look like boulders. So basically when you're kind of working with it, you can, let me swap hands here because I'm not left-handed. But you know, when you're looking at things like these edges here, you can kind of pick little bits out, you know, to kind of represent areas where rocks have kind of fallen apart or chipped away over time. You know, and it's just adding little details like this, which actually make quite a difference. I know it doesn't look like much, but you can use your tools to kind of add these interesting kind of textures along, which I know doesn't look like much, but you don't want to go overboard. You don't want to overcarve. Let's see, we lost a bit of cement there, but just little details will help make it look a bit more natural. Now this rock is actually going to be more on show than the other one. So when public are viewing this exhibit, what we've kind of remembered is the fact that people are more likely to see that one because that one's actually facing from the windows. And this one's kind of hidden. So we're not really bothered what the back of this one looks like. We're just more bothered about what the top looks like. So as you can see, we've done a little bit of carving along the back there just to add a few little details and crevices and stuff in, but nothing major yet. The top looks pretty good. Again, these are just created by using your trowel, using your tools. So you can see these shapes here are literally created by this trowel. Just basically pushing it in, pulling it out and creating these little edges. And then you get this kind of cool rock texture. So we're just going to add some more textures to this boulder over here, and I'll show you some techniques. So we finished the main carving now, and again, we're not professionals, but we've shown you all the right techniques and all the ways to actually build this up. So we've done We've added a few kind of striations in the rock and probably too many lumps and bumps, but you get the idea. This one over here does look slightly better because this was our second one, so I'm slightly happier with the way that this one's kind of turned out. There's a few areas there where the scratch coat's been exposed, but that doesn't matter because the scratch coat is still really tough. And once it all dries, you won't really notice, and once it gets painted, you won't notice either. So once this goes off, you can give it a day. It's ready for paint, and of course we use masonry paint. And the painting is kind of when all of this kind of comes together and it starts to look real. So all the cement has now properly cured. We've left it for about a week, but to be fair, you could probably paint it like next day or 2 days after actually putting the top coat on and obviously carving it. So today we're gonna show you how to paint a rock to try and help it look more rocky. There's definitely some techniques that you can use to give it kind of that realistic effect, and obviously use more than one color, but there's special ways of actually using it. So literally all we've got to do this is masonry paint, and this has obviously got a very, very low kind of environmental impact because obviously this is going into an animal exhibit, and we've got black and white and a bit of brown. And I'll show you some pretty cool techniques of how to make it look like a rock. So we've added the first kind of base coat to the rocks. It does look very, very dark at the minute, but we've added some kind of dark tones in there. We've let it dry a little bit. The masonry paint obviously soaks in super fast. So what we're going to do now is add some highlights, and it's going to kind of try and replicate the effects of kind of rocks rolling and bashing into each other over time. So it's kind of like those little white scuffed effects, and add some other little details just to make them pop, and then we're done. So as Lucy finishes off the highlights on the other rock there, you can see that we've done the highlighting on this one now, and it does make such a difference. So as you dry brush it on, I mean, you literally put the smallest amount of paint on your brush at a time. It literally just catches the higher parts of the rock, which then naturally leaves darker parts of the rock at the bottom there. So like along your edges, you'll have a lot more lighter detail, and that's naturally what a rock would look like. And then I've done an Aiden technique, something that you showed me a little while ago. I've lost it now. And that's get a spray bottle with a bit of water in, mix some black masonry paint in, and you can add some little details with this just by kind of spraying little splashes of black at the rock, and that kind of helps break up the detail as well. And you could do that with obviously blacks or dark greys or that on rocks, but when you're doing trees you can kind of do a bit of a lime green and it kind of makes it look like lichen. So there's a couple of really cool techniques there. But that's it in a nutshell. That's how you make a mock rock. If we had done it solidly every day, it probably would have taken us 3 or 4 days in total, but we've done it over the space of a couple of weeks just to fit it in. Really pleased with the way that they look, especially for amateurs. Of course, strongly recommend that you get professional to do it, because obviously it's all about the artistic bit at the end when you actually carve it. We're pretty pleased with how these have come out because we don't really want them to stand out as being super artistic rocks in the serval enclosure. We really want the serval to stand out instead. So it was more kind of a demonstration of the process, but again, I've put Aidan's link in the description if you want a professional to come and do a big job for you. But of course, I've also got a list there if you want to have a go at trying yourself, an achievable task for any keepers or any maintenance staff in your zoo or collection or private collection at home as well. Anyways, hope you enjoyed that tutorial. Do drop a comment below what you thought of it, and if you haven't done already, please do remember to like this video and subscribe to our zoo channel, and see you next time.